Hello, everybody, and welcome to the People's Choice Podcast, the podcast where we look at films that were reviewed poorly on release but are now loved by us, the fans, today. On this episode of Return of Jennifer Check, we explore the recently appreciated Jennifer's Body. I'm Ewan.Austin, joined by my co-host Blake Ali, but we're spoilers for the entire film.
This week we're talking about Jennifer's Body. It's a movie that wasn't well received when it came out, but after 10 years of its release, it's doing really well and people have found it and fallen in love with the movie. The movie is about a teenage girl in high school being sacrificed by a satanic group, basically an indie band, and she becomes a succubus and ends up getting her revenge and starts eating boys. It's a really interesting dark horror movie that we're going to discuss today. Um, I think the marketing was a big part of why it wasn't successful at the beginning of its release. And I've watched an interview with Megan Fox and Diablo Cody, the writer of the movie, and they discussed that in detail. And they spoke about how the marketing team went completely against what their wishes were for the movie. Diablo Cody originally wrote the movie for young women and teenage girls, and the marketing team went the opposite direction and marketed it towards straight young males between the age of 18 and 24. And they did screen testing where they brought in two different groups of people. And because Diablo Cody was the writer for Juno, which won an Oscar, people expected Jennifer's Body to be very similar to Juno. They thought that they were going to see a romantic comedy, basically. And they were shocked when they got there and they saw like a horror and people dying and this mad girl like killing boys, basically. And then the other group were straight males who I think Megan Fox said that they were like frat guys, and they were expecting to see Megan Fox like stripped down and be naked. And I think the marketing team really played on Megan Fox's sex appeal at the time because she was coming straight from Transformers where she'd been overly sexualized.
I especially get the marketing issue. For years, at least, I heard the film basically be described as the sexy cannibal cheerleader movie, and it's a lot more. Even when it came out, Roger Ebert even said that the film is a lot better than it deserves to be. But it's not a film that deserves to be better than it is. It's a film that is actually better than it is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that's the thing. There's a lot of hidden gems in the film that people, if you're looking at it from like a superficial perspective, you miss a lot of that. And then it's when you rewatch it and you like understand the like themes behind it and the humor behind it that it makes so much more sense, I think. I mean, I loved the film the day that I watched it. I was obsessed with it. But I do know that from looking at reviews and what people, the audiences have said, was that there's really mixed reviews even now. Like, I was looking at reviews from 2019 and people were just like, I don't get it. It's still like, it's just a shit film. And it's not a shit film. It's just, you either get it or you don't, or you learn to understand it, I think.
Yeah. Um, I know when it came out, a lot of people compared it to Twilight of all films, which I don't really get the comparison. I'd compare it more to some like similar horror films like Carrie, or even to a more extreme extent, I Spit on Your Grave, because those films also follow female leads who are placed into a position of like a where they're taken advantage of, and then they come out of that situation more powerful. Yeah, Twilight, I always feel like is kind of, I don't know, the reverse of that, and I don't understand why this film was compared to Twilight so much. But through a lot of reviews, see that comparison thrown around quite a lot.
I know I've seen the same thing, and I think again it was down to the marketing. And I think at the time Twilight was so successful the people just immediately, associated it because of the creature aspect, I think. Um, and it was like, in their minds, it was the reverse of Twilight. Here's this young girl, this teenage girl who is like mystifying, maybe, and also like enticing. And it's not that at all. I was actually like doing more research, and I watched a podcast called The Feminine Mistake on YouTube, and they discussed Jennifer's body for an hour in their podcast. And they talked about how in the marketing that they didn't even show Needy a lot. Like, she wasn't in the trailer very much. The only part I think she was in was where they're kissing. And they really pushed the narrative that it was this sexy horror and that the main focus was Jennifer. And it's not that kind of film at all. Like, the relationship between Needy and Jennifer is basically the foundation of the film. And all the way throughout, there's little snippets of their relationship. It shows like past scenes of them as children and when they first had their relationship bonding moment, and like the blood situation in the sandbox. um I think Megan Fox's character like had a pin in her finger, and Needy sucked the blood out. And so in the Feminine Mistakes podcast, they talked about how that could have been where their bond and connection started, because throughout the film, Needy is aware of Jennifer's presence whenever she comes to the house. And also when she's killing boys, she's like aware of that. And I thought that was a really interesting perspective.
Yeah, because I mean, the connection between them is visited a lot in the film, but it's never really explained. So having it be more than just, kind of emotional connection, but also kind of a physical connection based on what happened when they were kids is really interesting way to look at the relationship between them.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I noticed at the end of the film when Needy pulls off Jennifer's BFF necklace, best friend forever necklace, and it falls to the floor, and it's like turning and spinning in the air, and there's a drop of blood on it. And I thought that was like a connection between the beginning where they're in the sandbox. And I thought that was a nice touch to it.
Well, I plan to get into this a little more later, but I feel like especially Jennifer and Needy's relationship, but just relationships in general is a large theme of the film, and taking advantage of relationships and things. It's a large theme that continues throughout the film, which is one of the reasons I assume it's started get traction.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of reasons why people are starting to love it. I think the age of the people now, that when it came out, those people weren't able to watch it. Like, I was one of them. I think I was 15 when it came out. So I could have watched it, but I came from a religious background where movies like that were not accepted in my household. But later on, when I watched it, I know that even Diablo, she said most of the women that come up to her in the street and say that they love the movie are like 22-year-old women. And it's because now we're able to watch it and also appreciate it. And I think the way Diablo wrote it, I mean, it was written and directed by women and also starred two women. And I think that's really powerful. And I think at the time of its release, I don't think people really understood how powerful that is.
That's definitely more or less the point. I mean, when I watched it not too long after it came out, and I was 9 when it came out. So literally, when I watched it, I didn't get anything. But after rewatching it, especially recently, like I said, it's a lot more than it seems to be, off cuff of it. And I don't feel like when I watch it, I feel like I enjoy it for different reasons than other people because I can't relate to it in the same reasons as most people love it. So I understand where you're coming from with, it being, I don't know, this may sound weird, but it's a film made for that kind of audience, but it can be enjoyed by other people.
Yeah, definitely. I think it is definitely aimed to young women, but I do think it's a film that can be, like you said, enjoyed by a lot of different people, I think if you have an open mind when you're watching it, and instead of it just being about Jennifer's body, you actually watch it and take in the different themes that it's demonstrating and the story that it's telling. I mean, I noticed that even the song Through the Trees is about the film, which I'd never noticed before. I just thought it was a really catchy song and I liked it. And then watching it again this weekend or last weekend, I listened to the lyrics more, and it was like about the film itself, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, I've never really listened to the song Moon Depth. I've only ever heard it in the film. But how it's used in the film, because maybe it is because it's about the film and it's kind of subconsciously picking up on that. But whenever it plays, it always sounds daunting to me, like it's kind of describing impending doom. And maybe that's actually about the film and that's what's making that connection to me, but I don't know, it's always eerie when it plays in the film.
I think it's a really interesting song, and even the band is just so interesting. I watched a press release conference, and Adam Brody, the lead singer of the band, he talked about how he loved playing a character where he knew he was going to be hated and he didn't have to like pretend to be like loved or anything like that. And he said it was like a really interesting character to play. I also learned about the sacrifice scene and how like they're actually using spell or a sacrifice that they've found on Google, which I think is really cool because it shows like how much we depend on the internet, and how instead, back in the day you would have gone to like an occult book or an occult shop to find a book to use a spell or a curse, whereas they got it off Google, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, I think it moves the camera at one point, and I think it is literally just a screenshot of a Wikipedia article they printed out, which not just but the entire scene is just funny. Between that and when we just start singing 075309 whilst killing, like, it's a really funny scene, but because they're sacrificing a teenage girl and not taking serious, it's also kind of terrifying because of that, because of how nonchalant they take the entire thing.
I know, I think it's hilarious. And again, like referencing back to the Feminine Mistake podcast, they talked about how the film needed that humor to like have the balance of the movie and continue the tone of the movie throughout. And even though it's like a really harrowing experience, and it's like really, I don't know, it's a really serious topic and a really serious experience, but they've made it like funny and light-hearted and like kept the balance in that scene that the rest of the movie has basically.
Yeah, when it comes to the humor, at least personally, I don't think it keeps up with the tone of the film. In very straight, awkward kind of humor. And at points it comes so out of left field, it kind of adds to the surreal nature of the film. Like after the bar burns down near the start of the film, you see literally people running out the thing of a bar on fire, and Edie starts talking about she's starving and she wants to go get special nachos with butter sauce, and it's funny, but it doesn't fit the tone of the scene. But it does because they're in shock, and the humor film is a lot like that. Feels like it doesn't fit, but that's why it was.
No, I think the humor is like really interesting, like the one liners. I watched another press release where or conference, and Megan Fox was saying that Diablo Cody wasn't able to be on set every day, and so that when she was reading her lines or delivering them on set, she didn't actually know what she was saying, and she asked Karen Kusama, the director, what the sentences mean, what the lines mean, and even Kusama didn't know, and they were just like, "I'll just do it," and so they delivered the lines, but like a lot of the stuff they didn't even know what she was talking about, which I thought was really interesting how they were still able to deliver it and make it, genuine without Diablo Cody explaining what they're actually talking about.
I guess the kind of not understanding aspect of it comes from the humor's very much ahead of time, if that makes sense. It's very late millennial, Gen Z kind of humor, where it's kind of random, kind of awkward, doesn't always make sense. And it's the same in Juno. And I think if the film came out a decade later, the humor would be more understood, more appreciated. But because it came out at the beginning of meme culture, it's kind of an awkward spot.
Yeah, I know. I think it's definitely ahead of its time. I saw that people were talking about how it's quite similar to Mean Girls
Yeah.
because obviously it's based in a high school. All the way throughout the movie, it's humor and one liners, and it's got that same similar quality. But because of the way Mean Girls was packaged, it was packaged as this very girly pink, bold high school movie compared to Jennifer's Body, which was packaged as this girl who eats boys. They didn't get the same response. I mean, Mean Girls is still, I would say, a cult classic to this day. I don't know if it's a cult classic, but it's got a cult following to this day. I mean, even I watch it every single year on October 3rd because that's like a huge thing in the movie. And I think it's a shame that Jennifer's Body wasn't accepted the same way that Mean Girls was because they're very similar, even though I think Jennifer's Body came out 5 years afterwards. It's got that same quality with the script.
It's interesting you bring up the Mean Girls comparison, because I made the exact same comparison in my notes.
Yeah.
The film, yeah, it's a horror comedy, but I more than anything, it follows the structure of a teen movie. It has characteristics like a teen movie. The characters are like characters from teen movie. I see it like a teen movie with killing in between.
Yeah, definitely. Um, I know there's definitely a lot to the movie. I think they portray it as just this high school movie, and then you look at it and it's like, okay, it's about so much more than that. It's about empowerment. It's about finding yourself and the relationship. I read that the relationships between high school girls can almost mimic romantic relationships because of how intense they are, and they really portrayed that in this movie. At the beginning, you see like Needy in the bleachers or in the stand watching Jennifer as a cheerleader, and their eye contact and them smiling at each other is very romantic and very like involved. And one of the girls behind Needy is like, "Are you lesbian gay?" or something like that,
Yeah,
and that's where you see like the gay narrative starts from the very beginning and right till the end as well, where they like fight and they're like being they're wrestling in Jennifer's bed. I thought that was really interesting, and then like they hold hands in the movie. The kiss is more than a sexual encounter. It's like it's something that Needy's wanted for a really long time because she has been in love with Jennifer for a really long time. And I saw that Diablo said that she's in love with Jennifer, but she's also in love with her boyfriend Chip. So you get to see the two relationships like coexisting. But yeah, I think that's one of the reasons it's so popular now. The LGBT community have found this film and they've really taken hold of it and accepted it as like a gay film, basically.
like I said, our relationships now. A large theme of the film, I think, is being taken advantage of. Jennifer's taken advantage of by the band of start when she sacrificed. Jennifer takes advantage of Colin. She takes advantage of his attractiveness to her to eat him. She does the same with Peter. She takes advantage of his heartbreak. But more importantly, she takes advantage of Needy constantly. And I can't see Jennifer Needy a kind of toxic relationship. Needy can't do what she wants to Jennifer says it's okay. At the start, she can't dress. She can only dress how Jennifer wants her to dress, and she can't see Chip unless Jennifer says it's okay. And at least from Needy's point of view, I see it as very much her figuring out of this relationship.
Yeah, definitely. I think they both give each other something that they don't get from other people. Um, they get something from each other that they don't get from other people, and I think it shows like like you said, a toxic relationship and the good and the bad. You know, you can see that they have this bond, you can see that they've been friends for a really long time, but you can also see that it's starting to become twisted. And there's like rules within the relationship that have to be like abided by, basically. And that's not healthy for anyone.
Yeah.
I think the other reason it's doing so well now is definitely social media and the internet. I remember seeing the gif of Jennifer with the lighter at least every day when I had a Tumblr blog. It was reblogged so many times, and I even shared it. And even to this day, it's one of the scenes that a lot of people replicate, whether that be on TikTok, whether it be on Twitter, whether it be for a YouTube video. People love Jennifer's character. And I think that's something that's going to continue because it's a bit like Regina George in Mean Girls. She's intoxicating and she's seductive, but not just like in a sexual way, in more of a like you want to be her friend or you want to be her. And I think um, that's like really interesting. I know, I think the main thing was the marketing and the initial stages of the film. I think Diablo Cody said that when she wrote the movie, she wrote it really easily and she really enjoyed the process of the writing. And I think after that point is where it kind of messed up. When it was handed over to different departments. Um, I've seen that there's a lot of reviews that Kusama, the director, people didn't like the way she directed. But I personally think that she did an amazing job. I think the entire project came out really well.
Yeah.
What do you think of the directing of it?
Um, for directing's good. For directing cinematography and film is there moments film that really stick with me. Like a big one is when Colin's going to meet Jennifer. When he's walking into the house, it's a wide shot of the entire street, and you can barely see Colin as he walks in the house because it's just an entire street covered in darkness. And it's shots like that that really stick with me.
Yeah, I just love the color of the movie. Like all the colors and how that shot when Jen is walking like down the hallway and it's like slow mo and her hair is like moving and she's wearing pink with like hearts all over it. And it's like the day after she's killed two boys, I think.
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool. I love as well, like through the movie, when she doesn't eat, when she doesn't feed, and her skin starts to look like grey and dark, and her hair, she says, is lifeless. And I think that's a really cool like progression from her being like so beautiful and put together to like looking like she's not put together.
Yeah.
And I think because of the theme and the narrative that she's been traumatized and attacked and killed, there's a lot of the Me Too um like aspects in that as well. I know that people have like paired those two together, the Me Too movement and Jennifer's body, because of what she went through and how she acts after the trauma. Like she demonstrates things that real victims demonstrate in real life. Like she doesn't talk about the attack. She doesn't tell anyone that it happened or how it happened, and you don't see what happened until later in the movie, which I think is integral to the story. I think if we saw what happened at the beginning, it wouldn't have as much meaning to it being shown at like near the end is when everything comes together. And even when she tells Needy, it's like she's confessing and like opening up about what's happened, but Needy's like too alarmed to like accept what she's saying and like support her, which can happen to a lot of real life victims when they come forward and tell their story.
I completely agree. the connections between, especially in a post Me Too kind of world, the connections to trauma that's linked to abuse is very prevalent in film. Especially it's kind of not too subtle in a way as well, since people who, sacrifice Jennifer is a band to a small extent who she idolizes, and they take that admiration, they take advantage of that.
Yeah, definitely. Which can happen in real life, like when you're working with somebody that you idolize, or you come across somebody that you idolize, whether that be at a concert or something like that. Things like that can happen a lot. Um, I think it's even more meaningful that she's like obsessed with the band, and it shows
Exactly.
like the trauma that can happen from that. The other thing that I looked at was how knives are used in horror as like a penetrative tool, which I'd never thought about before. And it's a lot of women are like in movies killed by knives. And again, that can be connected to abuse and like the Me Too movement because of the tool that they're using rather than it being like a gun. It's like very personal and passionate. So I thought that was interesting. That's a reference from the Feminine Mistakes podcast as well. They talked a bit about that.
As I was gonna say, with the connection to knives, uh, this film itself follows um slasher movies quite a bit on formula. Not overall, but it follows the theme of this kind of monster following, stalking, and killing its prey. A common theme in the slasher genre. And as far as horror genres go, the slash genre is a very sexualized kind of genre, and making Jennifer the villain in that case, the slasher villain, really adds to the theme of kind of taking revenge from a sexual level.
I know, I think it's really interesting how she was a victim and she was preyed upon, and then she becomes the predator. And I
Yeah.
think that's an integral part of the movie is that she is then hunting. And that was something I was going to say earlier. The Feminine Mistakes podcast, they talked about how the victims that Jennifer goes after are vulnerable men or vulnerable boys. And I thought that was really interesting. Like, she's not going after, she didn't try and kill the band that killed her. She didn't try and kill like the evil people. She killed boys who were nice to her, who were sensitive and vulnerable, and who had lost friends in the Melody Lane incident, the fire. And I think that's really interesting. And in later in the movie, when she's killing Colin, she says, "I need you hopeless, I need you fearful," or something like that. And again, that's how she felt when she was being sacrificed. She was hopeless. She felt fearful, and so then it's like a play on how she felt, and she wants others to feel like that so that she can, get the satisfaction from killing them, I guess.
Yeah, on a different level, you can assume she just wants other people to understand her pain.
Yeah, definitely, to like get what she went through.
Yeah.
What did you think of the special effects?
Um, some of it was kind of not very good. Like, like the black tarry stuff she spews out. That stuff looks, I don't know, weird to me. But the actual effect when she like goes succubus to eat people, like when her mouth kind of, does the thing, that looks amazing in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely love that. I watched a bit of the behind the scenes, and they had these like heads that already had their mouths like wide open. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't had a chance.
Definitely watch it. There's one on YouTube where they're in the swimming pool and there's this guy from the crew holding this like half head that's just white and it's got this massive mouth with like the blood. And obviously then they like superimpose her head where he was holding the fake head in front of, is it Johnny Simmons, Chip's character? Um,
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, it's it's a pretty unique looking design and is a legitimately kind of eerie and scary design.
Yeah, I think it works with her character a lot. I think if they'd done it any different, I don't know how well that would have come across.
Yeah.
What do you think about the film and its time of the release? Do you think it would be more successful if it was released now or less successful?
Um. Now I think it. It'll I think it'd probably be more more successful because especially now people have more understanding and appreciation for horror. Like, look at Bloomhouse Pictures for instance. They release multiple horrors on an annual basis, and most of them do very well. You got films like the Conjuring films, Get Out, and well, on top of Get Out, political horror is very popular now. It's a very popular subgenre. You've got films like Get Out. You've got films like Us that look at more political uh, ways to display horror in a political subculture, and I feel like that's what Gender's Body does.
I know you can see that in films like, have you seen The Perfection?
I haven't, no.
Released that, and I would say it's a similar kind of concept. There's a revenge aspect, there's a trauma aspect, there's a narrative of abuse, and then like payback at the end. It's a really interesting film. I would say that it falls under that political subgenre as well. But yeah, like you said before, it could be likened to I Spit on Your Grave as
Yeah.
well. Um, I just think it's a really interesting movie, and I think if you look at it from the perspective of now, it still is so, it's even more relevant, I would say, now than it was when it was released.
Definitely. At least now, I wouldn't say it's considering more relevant, but I think it's more relevant in not in general, but in the spotlight. Because the issues displayed are not more common now, but especially more looked upon, more taken seriously.
They talked about in the interview that I watched between Megan and Diablo, they talked about how Diablo, when the movie came out, she really wanted there to be like a second movie and a TV show, and no one wanted to hear about it. And then that was 5 years ago, and then now she's got lots of different people coming to her saying that they want to make it into a TV show, and she said that she's really open to the idea because the film is very important to her and very significant. What do you think it would be like if they brought it into the TV show format?
I know when it came out, it had a graphic novel come out alongside it, but I think a TV show format would fit in more, in my opinion, because obviously, even if it's a one season limited run mini series, it would have a lot more time to not just develop Needy, but develop Jennifer as well, make them both sympathetic characters.
She compared it to Buffy the Vampire and how the Vampire Slayer and the movie came out and it wasn't, the best movie. It wasn't well received, but then it went on to become a hit show. And I think that was like something she was thinking about, like how the movie wasn't well received when it came out, but she could see its potential for being a TV show.
Like, I could see it as a kind of Netflix binge worthy kind of show, it could really work.
Do you think a limited series or something that could be like potentially seasons?
Um, I don't know. It depends how they'd go. If they tell the same story, I think it don't. It should. There's only enough story to last about a season. But if they decide, for example, like what they did with Buffy, expand it where it's more serialized. It explores a different issue every week and uses what happens, gender being a succubus, as a foundation to build a story rather than the story itself. It could last longer.
I wonder who would play Jennifer Check, because I know when they were talking about her Megan Fox being Jennifer Check, they knew instantly that they wanted her to play the main role. They had several different people in talks, but they knew that she was going to be Jennifer Check. So it's like, who could live up to her standard in the movie, kind of thing.
Yeah, I couldn't see anyone else apart from Megan Fox playing Jennifer. I mean, because it's not just her portrayal. Her portrayal's amazing. She's surprisingly good at being creepy, but it's not just that. It's also how she's displayed in the media because of stuff. Because mainly Michael Bay, but because of stuff like Transformers, Michael Bay, and she was very much seen like Jennifer as this very sexualized, uncaring person, though she's not. And so I was gonna say, and that really, goes into what it makes itself ready for the character she's gonna play.
Yeah, I mean, she even said in the interview with Diablo that at the time that they filmed the movie, she felt like she was Jennifer because of everything that was happening in the media. She felt like she was effectively portraying herself. And I think that was part of why the film wasn't successful, because of her, how she was being portrayed in the media at the time. And then, everything that was going on with her previous projects and the director affected how Jennifer's body was accepted or wasn't accepted in the public, or by the
Yeah.
public.
So I've seen a lot of reviews say, literally, if you scroll through like Rotten Tomato reviews now, a lot of them have Megan Fox enough said as a negative review, but Megan Fox was really good in Jennifer's body. Like when she needed to be creepy, she was really creepy. When she had to be disarming and friendly, she was really disarming and friendly.
I know the character really suits her, and I think out of everything I've seen her play, that's my favorite role that she's ever played. And she's even said that herself, that she absolutely loves the movie and loved playing Jennifer Check, which I think is really evident in the movie.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to go on to do more horror, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. I feel the same way.
Just, what's your general thoughts on the film? Like, your personal opinion?
I feel like I'm biased, but I really love the film. It's one of those films that I watch every single year during Halloween. And I mean, as soon as I watched it, I just fell in love with everything that it had to offer. The narrative, the soundtrack, I think is really strong. The band, I think, is really well put together. And at the time of its release, I was listening to bands just like this band. Um, so I felt connected to that, even now, like nostalgia. Um, I love the cast as well. I think it's a really strong cast. I love the characters. I think Chip is very underrated in the movie as well. He plays a really significant role in the movie, and I don't think we talk about that enough when we look at the movie and discuss it. Um, but yeah, I think like the humor is on point. I know that there's some people that talk about the some of the jokes and whether they're racist or that they are racist. I feel like if you it's satire at the end of the day, and I think if you look at it from that point of view, you can find that it's really funny. And it's showing like high schoolers as high schoolers and teenagers and some of the shit that they say basically.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Honestly, I don't like it as much as I used to. Pure because when I used to watch it, it'd just be kind of mindless entertainment. But now I've got more of an understanding of it. I appreciate it more. I enjoy it more. But I don't know if I could sit down and watch it, for example, every year. I really like the film, but it's not a film I could have repeat watchings of.
That's fair enough. I think maybe because of, like you said, you understand it more and it's not just something you like flick on. I mean, you could just do that.
Yeah.
But I think now that the narrative has been explained a lot more by Diablo Cody and Kusama, I think that people view it in a different way. And I think because you can see the undertones and like the serious nature of the film, it does kind of take away a little bit from how silly and funny it is.
But I wouldn't even say that's near a negative thing. I think that's such a good thing for film. Like I understand it more, but relate to it less. That's okay because it's not made for me. It's not. I'm not the target audience.
I think that's really interesting though, like that you can enjoy it and know that it's not for your
Yeah.
like for you essentially. Um, I think as I grow older, I mean, I'm 27 now, so I think I still enjoy the movie for what it is. And because I can see the message that it's got behind it, I appreciate it a bit more. But I do wonder what I'll think of it when I'm like in my late 30s, like 10 years from now. I think the fact that it's so iconic and that people every year dress up as Jennifer Check for Halloween, I do think it's a movie that's gonna stay for a while and people are gonna continue to want to dress up as Jennifer Check. I think it has that like quality about it, especially with TikTok. I mean, it's effectively become a cosplay.
Yeah. I don't see it being dead. I see a resurgent in it soon. I see it coming back. I don't know, be it a new film, TV show, especially with how much it's been appreciated recently. Um, a, like a month or two ago, uh, things came out about Megan Fox where people started talking about Megan Fox again, appreciating kind of what she went through in the industry. So I really don't see this franchise being dormant. I see it coming back sometime pretty soon in the next few years.
I think that would be really exciting.
And that's all the time we have. Thank you for so much for joining us on this episode of the People's Choice Podcast. Please let us know what you think about Jennifer's Body. Also, don't forget to join us next time where we discuss cult classic Donnie Darko. See you then.